Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to Our Perspective. It's your host here, Mariah. Before we get started into today's podcast episode, I just want to give a couple announcements. Please be sure to check out our website at our.perspective.myshopify.com, where we have mental health stickers, guides on how to reflect, write a letter to yourself, and get some healing and self-reflection going, along with some vision board guides on how to be intentional with your goals and envision them. Also, please be sure to check out our Instagram, our Facebook, and we're also on Pinterest if you didn't know. So go check us out, and we appreciate all your support. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel to keep updated on what we got going on. Okay? So today's episode, if you're watching on YouTube or on listening on audio, we're going to be talking about grief. Ooh, so excited. I know. But it's necessary to talk about. So, this is not the typical type of grief you think about when we say grief. The type of grief that I want to discuss is grieving the way you expected your parents to be. Let's sit with that for a moment. Grieving the expectations that you've had for your parents, whether it be from your childhood or your adulthood or wherever you're at now, grieving your expectations. Along with grieving your old self in order to shed skin and become a new version of yourself, whatever that looks like. And like I said in many episodes, when I speak about these things, I don't exclude myself. I'm on my own healing journey when it comes to different things. So this is essentially the platform to share this with you and hopefully encourage you to walk your healing journey as well. And to remind you that you're not alone. You're definitely not alone. So getting right into speaking about grief. There's a lot of things that we can experience as a kid and as a young adult growing into adulthood that we don't necessarily expect, that we don't necessarily want to go through, But there are times where we have to deal with it and roll with the punches. But when it comes to trauma specifically, if your parents are, how do I put it? If your parents are participating in things that are inducing trauma in your life as a child or young adult, there are things that you may feel that are very unforgivable, and that can be something, I don't want to say as small as, because it's not small, but that can be something from verbal abuse all the way up to something worse, like physical abuse or things like that. And as a child, you essentially expect your parents to be a safe space because they brought you into this world, right? But that's not necessarily how it goes for a lot of people. And there's a lot of processing that needs to happen, and not many do it or choose not to because it's too hurtful to bear. Or I'm just going to put this to the side, or I'm just going to push this to the back because I don't want to deal with it right now. But what we don't recognize is how much it's hurting us when we do suppress it. And that goes for anything and everybody. The people that we have in our lives, our parents, the people that we choose to be involved with in any way that they have hurt us, and we just push it to the back, and not face it. for what it is. It affects us more than you think. It definitely does. So in the aspect of grieving the expectations that you have for your parents, in the previous episode, I talked about kind of being in a place of understanding the tools that your parents were given and understanding the cards that they were dealt with. That doesn't excuse the behavior. Let's not get that twisted. That does not excuse the behavior, but you're able to put yourself in a position where you can understand them more. And the tools that they were given, or lack of tools that they were given, tells you everything. How they deal with their emotions, how they suppress their emotions, if they deal with their emotions, how they make certain decisions, how they parent, how they have relationships, if they have relationships. All of those things. So when we expect someone in a parental role to show up for us in certain ways and they don't, there's a disconnect. Clearly, right? There's a disconnect. And number one, when we don't communicate those things, they'll never know. And even if we do communicate those things and they're aware of it, they may still choose not to. And this is where, like I stated in a previous episode, parents can get grace, but our boundaries don't. Because I need you to show up for me in this way. And if you're not capable of doing so, I'm going to be over here. I'm going to go over here. And when you're ready, you can meet me where I'm at. Plain and simple, right? But there's so much gray area and there's so much emotion in the middle of that. Being able to say, this is where I need you to meet me. Some of us never get to that point. Some of us stay in the space of, why are you doing this to me? Why don't you love me? Why don't you care about me? What is wrong with me? And although we may still have those thoughts when it comes to certain situations, but we have to sit back and look at what is really going on. Why is this person behaving this way? Why is this person treating me this way? Am I the only person that gets treated this way from this person? For instance, if you have siblings, your parents' partner, your parents' sister, your parents' mother, your parents, anybody in the family at this point, are you the only person getting treated that way? Or does this person treat everybody that way? And those kind of little seeds that are planted helps you recognize that sometimes it's never you, but it's not always you. The way people treat you is not always you. It speaks more about them, and I'm sure we've heard those things before and via social media, but take in how much of that is true. When we're not doing okay, when we're going through some things, take into account how we treat people or how we behave or the things that we do to cope. Are we treating people the best? Do we slip up? I definitely do. More often than I would like to admit, but you know what? We're here. I started going on a tangent and I lost track. There's a certain level of grief that we have when there's a difference between the way people show up for us and are presented to us and the connection that we have with them versus the expectations we have for them and what they're not upholding to. And there's a level of discernment that you need to have to recognize, is this something that I want overall? Is this something that I want to keep around? Or is this something that I need to create limits and boundaries around in order to maintain a relationship with them? And that doesn't mean that you love them any less. But it's more about preserving you and preserving your energy and what you can and cannot handle, and simply what you deserve. Simply what you deserve. Let's think about that. So, in reference back to grief, I noted a thought that I had when I was thinking about this topic for the podcast, is that as a child we have certain wounds, obviously, like, how do I explain it? Like, if you have a parent who's not really emotionally available or emotionally strong, and you weren't taught how to really process your emotions, or expressing certain emotions were looked at negatively, you couldn't grow up in that same type of light. Like, emotions are not okay, or I may need to detach from relationships when things go wrong, or isolating is a coping mechanism, or indulging in like drinking or anything more than that as a coping mechanism because that's what you were conditioned to learn, those things. In reference to that example, as a young adult or an adult now, when you attempt to maintain a relationship with your parent or simply express yourself to your parent and it's still looked at as a negative light to where you're trying to process your emotions or express yourself, you grieve for that inner child. You grieve for that little girl, that little boy inside who simply felt pain as a kid, or whether it be you felt ignored, or you felt unheard, or you felt misunderstood. You feel for that little person inside. And as much as we may not see that in the moment, we need to take a step back and set those limitations and boundaries for that little person inside. We need to still show up for them. Now that you're a young adult or an adult, you're able to set certain limitations. You're able to speak up. You're able to decide that you don't want that relationship. And that is okay. That is okay. Get rid of the because that's your sister, because that's your brother, because that's your mother, because that's your father. get rid of it. Get rid of it. Please, get rid of it. Get rid of it. I am so tired. I'm so tired of people making excuses for having to sit with things that are uncomfortable. It is okay. It is okay if you have boundaries and limitations with a relationship that you need to set limits with. It is okay. Because just because someone has a role of a father or a sister or a brother, because that's a title, that doesn't mean that they are valuing their own title or they're living up to that title. Listen, me as a sister, me as an aunt, me as a daughter, me as a niece, if I'm not treating my uncle in the aspect of me being a niece, why wouldn't he cut me off? Why wouldn't he not reach out to me every 3 months just to check in because he cares? Why wouldn't he only be selective about when and where he's talking to me if I'm not upholding that role as a niece? Why would he? And why is that looked at as wrong? Okay. 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 I have grew up with that being like drilled into my head, and that being the constant excuse of things with maintaining relationships with people in my family, whether it be me or somebody else. And it doesn't really benefit nobody. Like, truth be told, it doesn't really benefit nobody. It causes a lot of turmoil because you're maintaining a relationship at a like one-on-one level when it's not comfortable for you. You don't respect this person, or you feel like they don't respect you. You cannot confide in this person. It could be a simple, I love you, I hear you, but I'm gonna go over here. And if you pass by me, I'm gonna say hi and we can have a little conversation. But you can't stay here for 3 days. Mm-mm. Mm-mm. You can call me, but we can't FaceTime. You could text me, but I don't want to talk about that situation that you want to vent about. Mm-mm. How about you ask me how I'm doing? How about you tell me about you? Tell me about what you got going on. Ask me what I got going on. I don't want to talk about nobody else. Those are the things that we have to think about when we're in the space of, number one, healing. Number two, trying to break those cycles of, and that like cultural, generational expectation of maintaining a relationship because just because somebody has a title. You don't need to. And don't let nobody convince you otherwise. And that doesn't mean that you love them any less. That doesn't mean that. That means that you're taking care of yourself the best way you know how in the times that you couldn't before. You're holding your inner child's hand and guiding the way because now you're able to. And don't let anybody try to take that opportunity away from you. Regardless if you're still living in the same household, regardless if you're just recently moved out and on your own, or if there's financial limitations, or if there's emotional limitations, you can still lead the way. And with leading in the way, you're essentially stepping into a new version of yourself. You're doing the work and rebranding and rebirthing the person that you want to be, because you're choosing to be that. You don't have to be a product of your environment. You don't have to be a product of your family. You don't have to be a product of the things that you've been taught, because you become to a certain point at a certain age where that's no longer an excuse. Because the things you choose every day is what you're the product of. The habits you choose every day is how you're going to get better or worse. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please don't forget to seize the day and don't let the day seize you. And I'll see you next time. Bye.